Prigozhin observes that Russia's flanks are collapsing in Bakhmut. Newsweek had a report titled "Prigozhin says Russian flanks are collapsing in Bakhmut," which means Prigozhin comments that Russian flanks are collapsing in Bakhmut. According to Wagner's boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Russian troops were running off the flanks around Bakhmut, a city besieged for months that pro-Kremlin mercenaries had been trying to capture. On Friday, Prigozhin claimed the Russian Defense Ministry was fabricated after claiming a Ukrainian attack was repelled near Bakhmut before the Moscow army regrouped at a new location with the more favorable conditions. Russian forces are in control of most of Bakhmut, but the Ukrainian army is still holding out in the western areas of Donbass, and they have begun to counterattack on the flanks. Despite its limited strategic value, Bakhmut has developed enormous symbolic importance for both sides and is a potential target for a long-awaited Ukrainian counterattack. During a press conference on Friday, Igor Konashenkov, a spokesman for the Russian Defense Ministry, claimed a Ukrainian attack had been repulsed around Soledar, located just north of Bakhmut. On the Soledar tactical front yesterday, the enemy carried out offensive actions along the entire line of the sides with a length of more than 95 kilometers, he said. Units of the armed forces of Ukraine carried out 26 attacks, with the participation of more than 1,000 servicemen, up to 40 tanks, as well as other special and military equipment. All attacks by units of the armed forces of Ukraine were repulsed, and there was no breakthrough in the defenses of the Russian army. Konashenkov added, on the Maloyarivka front, in order to strengthen the stability of the defense, units of the southern group of Russian troops attacked this front, taking into account the favorable conditions of Ho containing Berkivka. However, this version of events was strongly opposed by Prigozhin. He claimed that Ukraine's interests could lead to a gradual encirclement of Bakhmut in a post on the social media platform Telegram. The entire operation from the west to Bakhmut lasted from October 8, 2022, which is 7 months, said Prigozhin. In particular, during this time we captured the Berkivka reservoir, the Berkivka settlement, and moved along the Bakhmut-Slavinsk road in the direction of Slavinsk. Now the reverse process is happening. After we switched flanks, there was no tactical retreat. To put it mildly, Comrade Konashenkov fabricated it. The Russian Ministry of Defense simply fled from the flanks. Prigozhin has become increasingly outspoken in his criticism of senior figures in the Russian military, including Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian and Ukrainian defense ministries for comment. Earlier this month, Prigozhin said Wagner would withdraw troops from Bakhmut, citing a lack of ammunition that he blamed on the defense ministry, although he later reversed this position after being promised more supplies. Prigozhin, nicknamed Putin's chef because he also owns a catering company, has worked for the Kremlin. Last week he confirmed that Bakhmut will be taken. He also praised the Ukrainian defenders, remarking, "The enemy was well-equipped, well-trained, acted in concert and fought back properly, so we went forward, everything was burning. On fire." Ukraine says Russia lost 27 artillery systems, 12 armored vehicles and 6 tanks in one day. Newsweek had a report titled "Russia loses 27 artillery systems, 12 APVs and 6 tanks in a day, Ukraine," which means Ukraine says Russia lost 27 artillery systems, 12 armored vehicles and 6 tanks in the process. A day. Ukraine's military destroyed or seized 27 Russian artillery systems, 12 armored personnel carriers and 6 tanks on Friday, according to the country's general staff. The statements were made on social media as part of a daily update released on Saturday. Over the past few days, Ukrainian forces have made several victories around the Donbass city of Bakhmut, which Moscow has spent the past few months trying to capture. Kyiv is expected to launch a major counteroffensive in the coming months, although President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he needs a little more time for the necessary equipment to arrive. The latest Ukrainian military report claims 590 Russian servicemen have been liquidated on Friday, bringing the total number of Russian soldiers killed since the invasion began to 198,260. Since Putin's special military operation was launched in February 2022, Kyiv said it has destroyed 3,751 Russian tanks and 7,307 armored personnel carriers. Ukraine also claims it destroyed 29 Russian drones and 2 anti-aircraft missile systems on Friday. Saturday's report concluded, "Punch the invader. Together we will win. Our strength lies in the truth." British Defence Intelligence also published a military update on Saturday claiming Ukrainian troops had regained at least a kilometre of territory over the past 4 days. The UK claims Russia's 72nd Motorized Rifle Brigade is likely to have made a panic retreat south of Bakhmut after the Ukraine attack it allegedly lost its combat morale and effectiveness, limited combat results. On Friday, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the pro-Moscow Wagner mercenary group, claimed Russian troops simply fled from the flanks around Bakhmut. He said Russia had lost the land it took months to gain, and commented that the whole operation from the west to Bakhmut lasted from October 8, 2022, that is, 7 months. In particular, during this time we captured the Berkivka Reservoir, the Berkivka settlement and moved along the Bakhmut-Slavinsk road in the direction of Slavinsk. Now the reverse is happening. Wagner, having recruited heavily from Russian prisons, is heavily involved in the Bakhmut battlefield. Last week, Prigozhin was still insisting that the devastated city will be captured. Earlier this week, the UK announced it had supplied Ukraine with Storm Shadow cruise missiles, which can hit targets up to 155 miles away, meaning that all of Russia-invaded Ukraine is within range. They're shot. British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said the weapons would help give Ukrainians the best chance to defend themselves against continued Russian brutality. 3. Increased fighting reported along the border between Kharkiv and Luhansk regions in eastern Ukraine. According to Russian and Ukrainian officials, fighting has intensified along the border between the Kharkiv and Luhansk regions in eastern Ukraine. During a press conference at the Kyiv Press Center on Saturday, May 13, Ukrainian Defense Ministry spokesman Brigadier General Alexei Hromov said Russian artillery and mortar fire hit 10 settlements in the region. Kupiansk, in Kharkiv. Meanwhile, Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said that in the same area, Russian ground forces supported by the Air Force attacked 2 Ukrainian units, the Independent Mechanized Brigade No. 14th and the 103rd Territorial Defense Brigade. Konashenkov said artillery fire prevented the rotation of Ukrainian troops in the area. An unofficial Russian social media account also said Ukrainian attacks had increased along the eastern front of Kupiansk, but no progress had been made. To the south, Brigadier General Alexei Hromov reported on artillery attacks and other attacks by Russian forces on the Zaporizhia area, where Russian forces were defending gains for several days. First of the invasion. He said villages along the entire front were heavily shelled, including Stepnohursk, Mala Tokmachka and Yuliapol. He also stated that under the guise of evacuating civilians, Russian soldiers are fleeing the town of Enerhodar, near the Zaporizhia nuclear plant. Some civilians who were evacuated from Russian-controlled areas near the front lines in Zaporizhia have returned home, because they have to fend for themselves in Berdyansk, further south, and people are afraid that their homes will be looted. 4. Ukrainian officials say Russia tried to destroy the US-made Patriot system. Russia attempted to destroy a US-made Patriot air defense system in Ukraine last week with a hypersonic missile, 2 US officials told CNN. Officials said the attack failed and that the Ukrainian military instead intercepted the missile with a Patriot system, marking the first time it successfully used the advanced air defense system just weeks after it comes to this country. An official said the Ukrainian air defenses fired multiple missiles from the Patriot at different angles to intercept the Russian missile, demonstrating how quickly they had become proficient in the use of this powerful system. American officials believe that the Russians have picked up on signals emitted by the Patriot, allowing them to attack the system with a hypersonic missile, known as a Kinzhal or Killjoy. The Patriot missile system has a powerful radar to detect incoming targets at long range, making it a powerful air defense platform capable of intercepting ballistic missiles and more. But the emission of the radar signals needed to detect threats at a distance also makes it possible for the enemy to detect the Patriot battery and find out its location. Officials say there are ways to disguise those signals to some extent, but the Russian military can clearly figure out the preliminary location of the Patriot stationed outside Kyiv. Mykola Oshchuk, commander of the Air Force of Ukraine, said the interception took place on the night of May 4. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has previously said that the Patriots would certainly not be a legitimate target for Russian forces. Pentagon spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder confirmed earlier this week that the Ukrainians used the Patriot system to intercept Kinzhal, which can reach supersonic speeds. Ukraine has received at least 2 Patriot systems, one from the United States and one from Germany, to bolster its air defenses, which were previously unable to intercept more modern Russian missiles such as the Kinzhal. 5. Big explosion reported in Luhansk due to Russian invasion. According to local officials, the explosions rocked the eastern Ukrainian city of Luhansk, which has been invaded by Russian forces and is an important center for the so-called special military operation of Moscow. 2 Qua. The head of the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic, Leonid Pasechnik, blamed Ukraine for the attack, calling it another attempt by the Kiev terrorist regime to intimidate civilians. Firefighters and all emergency services are at the scene. The circumstances of the incident and information about the victims are being determined, he said. Pasechnik said the city's Leninsky district was shelled on Republic Day, a holiday in the breakaway region. 2 rockets hit the city's industrial area, the Coordination Committee of the Luhansk People's Republic said on Telegram. The commission stated that the Ukrainian-made Grom missile system was used. The Grom is a ballistic missile with the Luhansk range and was previously used in the conflict. But there is no evidence that it was used in the attack cited by local authorities in Luhansk. The city has rarely been attacked by Ukrainian forces since the Russian invasion, as it is out of range of missile systems, such as HIMARS. A Telegram account said there were 2 explosions and smoke could be seen covering the city. A video posted online shows a large column of black smoke. Russian news agency TASS quoted a former official in Luhansk as saying that the Ukrainian armed forces used a missile with a range of 150 kilometers for the first time after at least 2 explosions in the city late on Friday. TASS quoted a retired lieutenant colonel of the Luhansk People's Republic of Militia, Andrei Marachko, but said there was no official confirmation of this information. The UK announced this week that the Storm Shadow cruise missiles have been delivered to Ukraine. They are usually launched from the air. Ukraine did not comment on any attacks on Russian forces in Luhansk. 6. Kremlin declares unity from Russia despite emotional disputes over Bakhmut. The Kremlin has acknowledged the offensive to capture Bakhmut was difficult and created an emotional situation, apparently alluding to the feud between Wagner's founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. I can tell you one thing, yes, actually, quite an emotional situation. Very difficult offensive operations are being carried out there, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said in an interview, according to state news agency TASS. This is a very solidly fortified area. There is a large group of the armed forces of Ukraine, which is constantly being replenished, including foreign equipment and foreign ammunition. So, of course, emotions are running high there, he added. Without naming Prigozhin or Shoigu, Peskov appeared to refer to the rift between the 2 sides, saying they were united in their goals. He explained, I will not name different names, but I will say, no matter what is said, no matter what statement is made, we are still talking about the armed forces of the Russian Federation. These are all Russian forces, united forces. And they pursue a single goal. The Kremlin spokesman also said he was certain that Russia would conquer Bakhmut. We have no doubt that Artemovsk, as Bakhmut is called in Russia, will be captured. It will continue to hold, he said. Some background information: Russian forces have been trying to capture the eastern city of Bakhmut for months. Some of the fighting was carried out by Russian regulars, provided by Shoigu's defense ministry, but most of the manpower was provided by the Wagner Group, Prigozhin's private mercenary company. While fighting continued to rage around Bakhmut, a different kind of fighting took place on the sidelines, as Prigozhin unleashed a series of public criticisms of Moscow, berating the Russian military leadership for having sat like a fat pig in offices, while his Wagner army killed thousands. He has repeatedly threatened to withdraw from the area if no more supplies are provided. 7. Czech president thinks Ukraine's planned counterattack has a high chance of success but can cause high casualties. Czech president and former General NATO Petr Pavel said Ukraine's planned counteroffensive to regain territory invaded by Russia has a good chance of succeeding but can cause high casualties if Russia makes good use of its defenses. Be prepared. Pavel, 61, said in an interview that Ukraine needed support to join NATO and the European Union, but joining both would be a long process, despite accession negotiations. The European Union could start this year, Reuters reports. Pavel, who served as commander of the Czech army and was also the chief military advisor to the NATO Secretary General from 2015 to 2018, said Ukraine will eventually receive the Western fighters it is calling for, but could not deliver them in time for the oncoming attack, and had higher priorities like ammunition. There is certainly much hope that the Ukrainian counteroffensive will be successful, because Ukraine is motivated, well prepared, its army is experienced and certainly does not succumb to the same shortcomings as the Russian army, Mr. Pavel said at Prague Castle. The Russian military, he said, has serious logistical and morale problems, but the collapse of its defenses should not be expected. Russia has had time to prepare a relatively high-quality and in-depth defense system on several fronts that, if used effectively, will cause Ukraine major casualties, he said. It is impossible to say how much territory Ukraine can regain when many scenarios unfold, he said. Things don't always go according to wishes and plans, but I think Ukraine's chances of significant success are very high. 8. Boss Wagner invited the Russian defense minister to the Bakhmut front line amid the rift with the Kremlin. Yevgeny Prigozhin on Friday invited the Russian defense minister to visit the besieged eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut to assess the situation there. This is considered the latest provocative statement by the head of Wagner about the war leadership of the Kremlin. I ask you to go to the territory of Bakhmut, which is controlled by paramilitary units of the Russian Federation, and assess the situation for yourself, Prigozhin said in a letter to Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, which he has shared on his personal pages and on social media accounts. Prigozhin intensified complaints about the battlefield failures of his own mercenaries, and blamed the Russian Defense Ministry for the lack of ammunition to capture Bakhmut, naming Shoigu and the Russian military commander, General Valery Gerasimov. The owner of the private military company has also complained in recent days that the areas captured by his fighters around Bakhmut at the cost of heavy casualties are now being lost to the hands Ukrainians. At present, units of PMC Wagner control over 95% of Bakhmut settlement and continue to attack to completely liberate this place, Prigozhin wrote in the letter on Friday. On the side of PMC Wagner, where units of the armed forces of the Russian Federation are located, the enemy launched a number of successful counterattacks. 9. Russian military helicopter crashed in Crimea, 2 people were killed. 2 Russian pilots were killed on Friday when a Russian Mi-28 military helicopter crashed in the Crimean Peninsula, Russian news agencies reported, citing the Russian Defense Ministry. The Defense Ministry said it believes the cause of the crash was equipment failure, the TASS news agency reported. The crash happened at 3:42 p.m. local time during a training flight and the helicopter was flying unarmed. An investigation has been opened to confirm the cause of the accident, which occurred in the Dzhankoy region of northern Crimea. 10. Zelensky thanks Salter for providing long-range missiles. In his address to his compatriots on Friday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he thanked British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for providing long-range cruise missiles. He said, "Today, I had a phone call with UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Thank you for greatly enhancing our capabilities with long-range Storm Shadow missiles and other valuable military support. We discussed further defense cooperation and coordination of our positions ahead of upcoming international events. In particular, we need clear signals about Ukraine's future with NATO." UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has confirmed that the UK will send long-range cruise missiles. Zelensky is expected to attend the next NATO summit in Vilnius in July, but has repeatedly requested a more specific timetable and more concrete steps for Ukraine to join the alliance. 11. Prigozhin says Russian troops are fleeing Bakhmut. Newsweek ran an article titled "Prigozhin says Russian military fleeing Bakhmut," which means, Prigozhin says Russian troops are fleeing Bakhmut. Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner Group, said on Friday that Russian troops were fleeing the city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine, and asserted that the official statement by the Russian Defense Ministry about the situation was false. Real. Igor Konashenkov, a ministry spokesman, said on Friday that units of the Russian Army's Southern Army Group had regrouped to take more favorable positions. Konashenkov said, "In order to strengthen the stability of the defense, units of the Army's Army South of the Russian Army occupied the line in the direction of Maloy-Leonovka, noting that the unit took into account favorable conditions of the Berkivka Reservoir." Prigozhin's latest comments come shortly after he threatened to withdraw his Wagner Group fighters from Bakhmut because of a lack of ammunition and support from the Russian Defense Ministry. His warriors have been fighting in the city for months from Moscow, hoping to claim his first major victory on the battlefield since the summer of 2022, but recently he has ramped up his battles. Verbal attacks on Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov. In response to Konashenkov's comments on the situation in Bakhmut, Prigozhin said in a short audio message posted on Telegram that Russian troops are fleeing Bakhmut and not regrouping, as the Defense Ministry explains. "I'm on my way to the nearest headquarters now, where I can explain, and I'll explain what it is," he said. Unfortunately, what Konashenkov said should be called fleeing, not regrouping. What does it look like? I will explain in more detail. Newsweek has reached out to the Russian Defense Ministry by email for comment. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said the armed forces of Ukraine had advanced 2 kilometers in the direction of Bakhmut. The Institute for the Study of War, a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, similarly said in an assessment published Thursday that Ukrainian forces have likely breached some of Russia's defenses. During counterattacks near Bakhmut, General Alexander Syrsky, commander of the Ukrainian army, said that Russian forces retreat to 2 kilometers behind the Russian lines in the areas of the Bakhmut front. However, the Russian Defense Ministry was quick to dismiss reports of Ukrainian breakthroughs in the city. It said that the general situation in the area of special military operation is under control. Prigozhin had previously sent an open letter to Shoigu claiming that the Wagner Group controlled 95% of Bakhmut. He said units under the control of the Russian armed forces had been successfully counterattacked by Ukraine.